Russian troops are not on the Ukrainian front but have invaded Finland instead. Two Finnish recruits are being intimate when suddenly a large number of paratroopers appear overhead. A soldier goes to negotiate with this mysterious force and is shot dead on the spot. The remaining small squad of recruits flees in panic. Upon discovering the situation, the Finnish Navy immediately reports to the Ministry of Defense, and the entire country enters a state of emergency. Even the First Lady, who is meeting with her lover, is urgently recalled. 2 hours earlier, a group of recruits is conducting exercises on Finland's Hanko Peninsula. The commander's timing is off. The team members throw smoke grenades in the wrong position, and the machine gunner is too nervous, causing the gun to jam. Their poor combat skills are fully exposed. In the end, Berg's combat team finishes last. Captain Rami orders them to stay behind and clean up the battlefield, while the other soldiers all leave for their break. Berg, who has been holding back for a long time, eagerly hides in the woods with his boyfriend for some intimacy. However, just as they finish dressing, they notice a large number of paratroopers overhead, all wearing Finnish military uniforms. Berg's squad members guess this might be a special exercise. The machine gunner walks over unsuspectingly to ask which unit they're from.
Hey! Keitä te ootte? Mikä harjoitus? Stop! Get down on your knees!
He realizes it's an enemy attack and turns to run, but it's too late. The other team members are scared and flee immediately, with Berg retreating into the woods shortly after. Meanwhile, Captain Rami and the other soldiers, who are preparing to leave, also encounter trouble. 3 trucks block their way, with the drivers and keys missing. They are about to report to headquarters when they find that all communication networks are down. Then gunshots are heard in the distance, and the battle-experienced Rami becomes immediately alert. He orders these inexperienced soldiers and officers to stay in guard. He himself drives off in a jeep, taking an armored vehicle with him back to the recruit training camp. Soon after, 3 armed soldiers intercept Rami. He immediately reverses the jeep into a slope beside the road, then gets out and hides in the bushes to return fire. Fortunately, the armored vehicle behind catches up in time and provides suppressing fire. Rami checks the bodies and finds they are not Finnish soldiers, clearly indicating that an unidentified armed force has invaded. Worse still, radio communications are also cut off, leaving them unable to contact anyone. Suddenly, Rami spots 2 soldiers carrying rocket launchers in the forest ahead. Staying inside the armored vehicle now means certain death, so Rami immediately exits, returning fire while seeking cover. He then throws a smoke grenade for cover, but the inexperienced driver flees from cover before the smoke spreads. Left alone, Rami has no choice but to retreat temporarily. Meanwhile, Berg's combat team finds themselves surrounded in the woods. The enemy continuously uses loudspeakers to demand the surrender of the Finnish soldiers. Having just participated in an exercise, they now lack ammunition to fight the enemy. Fortunately, they find a supply point not yet occupied by enemy forces. Besides replenishing ammunition, they also find a radio but can't receive any signals. Berg plans to go to a nearby town for support. Before leaving, Osman also takes a rocket launcher. They have just approached a civilian house when they discover a squad of enemy soldiers closing in nearby. With battle imminent, several team members lose their nerve, constantly shouting about surrendering. Seeing them lose their will to fight, Berg can only retreat back into the woods with 3 determined team members. The rest are all captured. Berg's squad tries to break through from another direction, but soon encounters another enemy force. Seeing his boyfriend killed, Berg is grief-stricken. The enemy far outnumbers them, and their position is locked by drones. Berg can only flee in tears with the remaining 2 team members. Headquarters receives news that the enemy is still reinforcing. A cargo ship flying the Venezuelan flag deploys a motorized unit to the Hanko Peninsula. All communication on the peninsula is completely cut off, and the Finnish military loses total control of the area. Finnish warships at sea discover the situation and immediately notify the Air Force to send planes for reconnaissance. By now, the coastal police on the peninsula have been controlled by enemy forces, and numerous armored vehicles are entering the towns. The enemy is systematically deploying and suppressing resistance forces here. At this point, apart from the lone fighting Captain Rami and the defeated Berg squad, only the recruit unit guarding the highway remains, and the enemy's armored forces are rapidly advancing towards them. This is NATO's most humiliating day in history. In less than half a day, the Russian military occupies Finland's Hanko Peninsula. NATO's deployed defense facilities prove useless, and Europe's gateway falls easily. Berg never imagined that the new recruit combat exercise she participated would turn into a real war. Most of her combat squad is captured, and her boyfriend has just died in battle. With enemy armored vehicles constantly patrolling the peninsula, she can only suppress her grief and hide in a civilian house with her 2 remaining comrades, planning to regroup momentarily. Berg tries again to contact headquarters, but the radio remains inoperable. Suddenly, the sound of a car engine comes from outside, followed by soldiers disembarking. Jeff and Osman immediately set up an ambush inside the house, while Berg puts on a bathrobe, pretending to be the house's mistress. However, she forgets to hide her combat uniform, and the enemy immediately sees through her disguise. Realizing she's exposed, Berg decisively takes up her gun and eliminates the 2 remaining soldiers outside. Captain Rami's situation is equally perilous. He still can't contact the main force. He cautiously avoids enemy patrols on the streets while quickly returning to his home in town. However, his wife and daughter are missing, filling Rami with worry. Just as he's about to leave, a gun is pressed against his head.
Stop! Show your hands! On your knees! Rami.
It turns out to be his neighbor, Henry, who has organized a resistance force with his friends after the Hanko Peninsula's fall. With his help, Rami evades enemy searches and arrives at a hidden base. Learning that Henry has sent his wife and daughter to a safe hotel, Rami finally feels relieved. The Finnish government confirms that the invaders are a Russian mercenary organization. The Finnish military receives an encrypted email claiming the mercenaries only want to lease the Hanko Peninsula, not start a war. This is clearly a delaying tactic. However, Finnish President Linnea and the Prime Minister disagree on how to respond to the invasion, and the parliament is split into 2 factions. One side advocates for an immediate nationwide state of war emergency, while the other proposes dialogue with the invaders before deciding on combat. Unable to reach a consensus, the military is delayed in taking action. Meanwhile, the new recruits and 10,000 residents trapped on the Hanko Peninsula face constant danger. The invaders force captured Finnish soldiers to publicly urge others to surrender. Seeing the situation spiraling out of control, Linnea reluctantly seeks NATO's help. Unexpectedly, the United States, not wanting the conflict to escalate, refuses to trigger the collective defense mechanism for Finland. With most of the peninsula's districts occupied by enemy forces, Henry and his wife decide to disguise themselves as civilians to scout the city center. Rami stays at the base, maintaining contact with them through a special radio device. As they get closer to the city center, the enemy's deployment becomes increasingly dense, with armored vehicles and missiles all in place. Rami records all this intelligence based on Henry's descriptions to deceive the public and create favorable public opinion. The enemy sends reporters to claim the area is safe. Henry's wife can't resist getting out of the car to berate them.
Fuck you!
Henry then meets other retired comrades at the dock, only to find the invaders beating Finnish police officers. They immediately draw their guns to rescue them.
Stop!
However, the opponents are professional soldiers with superior firepower. Henry can only temporarily leave his wounded comrade behind, taking cover to provide covering fire for his wife's retreat. After taking down an enemy soldier, Henry is hit by a bullet as he prepares to withdraw. An armored vehicle is approaching him. Hearing gunshots, Rami hurriedly asks Henry about the situation, but the radio falls silent, followed by an unfamiliar voice.
Your friends are captured. Surrender, or we'll kill them.
Russia's playing dirty, sending a mercenary force to take over the Hanko Peninsula in Finland. They have sneaked in a boatload of troops and equipment, used a disguised cargo ship. The Finnish Defense Force's elite Jaeger units, riding in 2 H-90 choppers, swoops in to intercept the fleeing vessel in the Baltic Sea. A crack team fast ropes onto the deck and splits up. One group beelines for the hold, while the other takes control of the bridge.
Finnish Defense Force! Show me your hands! Get on the ground!
Just as intel suggested, there are extra hands in cockpit, 3 of them armed to the teeth. Outgunned and outmanned, they throw in the towel. The team searching the ballast tank, however, runs into some pushback. Despite nabbing the ship, they're still in hot water. To make matters worse, the Russian Navy's steaming in from Kaliningrad, headed straight for Finland. The Russians deny any involvement in the Hanko invasion and, get this, offer to send troops to help Finland rescue Russian citizens on Hanko. President Linnea sees right through this dog and pony show and calls in the Russian ambassador. The ambassador plays dumb, calling the Hanko situation a local conflict and insists Russia's just looking out for its people. Linnea's not buying it, but her own prime minister keeps throwing a wrench in the works, even playing into the Russian ambassador's hands. He's still dreaming of a come-by moment. The meeting ends on a sour note, with Linnea publicly ripping into the prime minister for being naive. While the politicians are playing chess, rookie squad leader Berg and her 2 remaining men are making a break for the harbor on Hanko. They just took out a bunch of enemy soldiers, and now the bad guys have locked down the port and hijacked all the boats. Forced to backtrack to the training grounds, they stumble upon a light armored vehicle. Lucky for them, it's empty with the keys still in it, but as soon as they hop in, a mini drone pops up. Osman thinks fast, swatting it down with a shovel from the vehicle. Their cover's blown, though. Berg floors it, but they don't get far before an armored personnel carrier is on their tail, its mounted gun blazing away. The 7.62mm rounds can't punch through their armor, but a firefight's the last thing they need right now. Berg zigzags like crazy, but they hit a roadblock. She cranks the wheel, sending them careening onto a beach. The APC's still hot on their heels, so Osman breaks out the M72 light anti-tank weapon. They take out the pursuit, but their ride conks out. With no other choice, they hightail it into the woods. Captain Rami's also playing hide and seek with the enemy. After learning his neighbors and buddies have been killed or captured, he grabs his gear and goes solo, dodging patrols. He slips into town disguised as a civilian, hell-bent on finding his wife and daughter. Meanwhile, the mercenaries occupying Hanko try to play nice, claiming they're just renting the peninsula as a gateway to Europe. They even have the gall to accuse Finnish troops of killing civilians. Truth is, those bodies in the photos are Rami's partners, gunned down by the mercs themselves. It's a classic frame job to paint Finland as the bad guy.
Täyttä valetta.
With public opinion turning sour, President Linnea knows it's time to put up or shut up. She suits up in fatigues and orders a special operations team to infiltrate Hanko for intel and to bag some high-ranking enemy officers. She gives the troops a rousing pep talk and, ever the social media savvy leader, has her aide record it for TikTok. After all, she's not just a president, she's an influencer. But when the US ambassador gets wind of Linnea's plan, he demands she call off the operation. Turns out the grandson of the US Speaker of the House is stuck on Hanko, Private Williams, one of Berg's men. That's why the US has been keeping NATO on a tight leash. But it's too late to pull the plug. The special operations team's already on Hanko. They fire up the Sirius system, linking up with HQ via military satellite. Finnish Hornet fighters take to the sky, joined by Swedish Gripen jets thanks to a mutual defense pact. They're set to stage a fake attack on Hanko with a Hamina-class missile boat, giving the special operations team cover to penetrate enemy lines. But Hanko's packing heat. An S-400 air defense system launches 2 missiles at the incoming jets. HQ scrambles to launch Stinger missiles to cover the Hornet's retreat, while the Gripen narrowly dodges with chaff. The action's not over yet. 2 more active radar homing missiles streak out from a ground launcher. The missile boat manages to shoot one down with its close-in weapon system and tricks the other with decoys. One thing's crystal clear, these mercenaries are armed to the teeth with some serious military muscle. While the enemy's attention is glued to the sea surface, the special operations team slips on their scuba gear and dives beneath the waves. As they near the shore, they quietly pop up. As soon as the special operations team lands on the beach and enters the dense forest, they encounter an armored vehicle on patrol. This indicates that the enemy has already established a structured occupation and military deployment, clearly not just a ragtag group relying on brute force. With all roads tightly blocked and monitored, the team plans to silently make their way to the city center through the sewers. However, they encounter an unexpected situation right from the start. A drunk man. 2 team members immediately restrain him to stop his shouting, while the others quickly take cover to observe any enemy movement nearby. Fortunately, no unusual activity is detected. The team, however, remains on high alert, knowing that any mistake could spell disaster. A team member, armed with an RK-62 assault rifle, uses a tactical flashlight to quickly check for tripwires as his comrade opens the door. At corners, he switches to a strobe light technique to disorient any enemies lurking in the darkness. In narrow passages, the point man switches to a compact Glock 17 pistol to handle potential close-quarter combat, while the rear guard maintains the more powerful assault rifle to ensure fire superiority. Upon reaching the core area, the team splits up according to the mission protocol. The breach team heads to the city hall to gather intelligence and locate the target, while the sniper team moves to occupy high ground in nearby buildings to observe and report enemy movements in real time, providing covering fire if necessary. The breach team quickly discovers a radar vehicle used to jam military and civilian communication networks. However, they face a dilemma as civilians are being used as human shields around the vehicle. Suddenly, an officer appears in the sniper's scope.
Easy.
Meillä positive ID. Main man, X-ray 1.
Suunnitelman muutos. Muuttu kiinniotto-tehtäväksi.
Kuitta tälle.
Guided by the sniper team at the vantage point, the breach team climbs to the rooftop and maneuvers into the building where the target is hiding. While they successfully avoid the outer security forces, they inevitably encounter soldiers patrolling the hallways.
Drop your weapon! Stop!
Gunfire alerts the enemy forces below, who immediately prepare to counterattack. But the sniper team, armed with Seiko TRG M10 sniper rifles, doesn't let them succeed. Despite the sudden firefight, the Special Operations team advances methodically. They move in a formation that creates interlocking fields of fire. At doorways, the rear support decisively throws a flashbang, while the lead breacher seamlessly rushes in to swiftly neutralize the enemies. Finally, they successfully capture the target officer. This fluid and synchronized teamwork is truly impressive to witness. Meanwhile, the sniper team continues to eliminate outer security forces. However, they soon face suppressing fire from a BMP infantry fighting vehicle that arrives as reinforcement. Its 30mm automatic grenade launcher forces the sniper team to abandon their rifles and quickly retreat. Just as they leave the building, they're ambushed by remaining enemies hiding behind the radar vehicle. One sniper is hit, but his body armor saves his life. As the infantry fighting vehicle closes in, the other sniper throws a smoke grenade to cover their retreat. Inside the building, the breach team escorting the target encounters another small group of enemies in the conference hall. The two team members covering the rear are forced to take defensive positions outside the door. Just like that, the teams split in two. To avoid getting bogged down in a prolonged firefight, they decide to withdraw from the engagement and break out separately. This special operation gradually begins to spiral out of control. As the Special Operations team engages in a life-or-death struggle with the enemy forces, the Finnish Prime Minister secretly meets with a Russian-appointed intermediary. He attempts to sign an unequal treaty, effectively ceding the Hanko Peninsula to Russia under the guise of a lease. With this achievement of diffusing the conflict and Russian support, he believes he can wrest the presidency from Linnea. However, just as the Prime Minister prepares to leave, he faces an assassination attempt by a sniper. He narrowly escapes, thanks to his bodyguard's sacrificial cover. The situation in Finnish politics grows increasingly chaotic. In a shocking turn of events, Russian mercenaries have invaded Finland's Hanko Peninsula and deployed nuclear weapons. Finland's President Linnea isn't taking this lying down. She sends in a crack team of Jaeger Special Operations to snatch a high-ranking enemy officer. While two of the team escort the big fish back, the rest of the squad stays put, lying low on the peninsula. After some intense grilling, the Finnish military learns the enemy's got a land-based cruise missile with a 2,500-kilometer range, packing a nuclear punch. If this intel's legit, every city around the Baltic Sea is in the crosshairs. But first things first, they've got to take out the enemy's radar vehicle that's jamming comms and warn the 10,000 folks on the peninsula to hit the deck. Going in guns blazing without this would be a bloodbath. But here's the kicker: these psychos are using civilians as human shields around the radar vehicle. Linnea, wearing her commander-in-chief hat, is in a real pickle. She can't stomach the idea of sacrificing even one citizen. While the Finnish government bigwigs are hemming and hawing, the Finnish soldiers stranded on Hanko are in increasingly hot water. Captain Rami finally tracks down his wife and daughter at a hotel, but they're not buying his war story. Their argument catches the ear of a nearby mercenary on patrol. Rami plays it cool, then catches the guy off guard with a surprise attack, knocking him out cold.
Get back!
He hightails it over a wall, but the bad guys are hot on his heels. Rami uses some fancy footwork, zigzagging to dodge the hail of bullets, and finally shakes his pursuers by vaulting over a low wall. Just when he thinks he's in the clear, he runs into another surprise.
Stop!
It's Berg and her two buddies, catching their breath, learning that the rest of Berg's squad is in enemy hands. Rami decides to wait for nightfall to make a sea escape, but before they can get their ducks in a row, the enemy comes barreling in. Rami makes the call Berg and her team hit the boat while he plays decoy. He operations one bad guy to get their attention, then takes out a drone with a well-placed shot. Once Berg's boat is out of sight, Rami withdrew from the crossfire and fled into the woods. But Berg and her crew aren't out of the woods yet.
Holy fucking shit!
Two speedier patrol boats are on their tail. They're forced to beach on a deserted island, but the enemy's right behind them. They're using a bullhorn, demanding Williams surrender. Turns out, the enemy knows Williams is the grandson of the US Speaker of the House. No wonder they're pulling out all the operations for a bunch of rookies. Berg orders Osman to make a run for it with the intel, while she and Williams stay back to hold the line. They use the rocky terrain for cover. But Williams catches a grenade blast. Berg patches him up quick, but the enemy uses this chance to surround them. Seeing Osman nab too, Berg has no choice but to throw in the towel. They're all marched off to a shipyard, joining other soldiers who gave up without a fight. The shame is written all over their faces when they see Berg. Just as President Linnea is on the fence about launching an attack, the enemy grabs her sister-in-law's family as hostages. The pressure from public opinion and worry for her family is eating Linnea alive, but she knows it's crunch time. Every second wasted puts more Finnish lives at risk. With Linnea's go-ahead, Operation Midnight Push kicks off. The Finnish Navy and Air Force move in tandem, locking down the airspace and sea routes around Hanko. Ground armor units make a beeline for the peninsula. 5 fighter jets, loaded with air-to-ground missiles, gear up to take out the enemy's 5 radar jamming vehicles. The special operations team near the radar vehicles gets the order to pull out. They've got less than 3 minutes before the missiles hit. But these guys can't stand by and watch their people get slaughtered, so they make a unanimous call to save the hostages first. The mercenaries guarding the place are no match for the special operations team and are wiped out in no time. Just as the hostages are freed, the jets let their missiles fly. Suddenly, an enemy armored vehicle shows up as backup. One of the assault team members is pinned down by heavy fire. Unable to get clear of the radar vehicle, he tosses a smoke grenade for cover and makes a mad dash for it, but he's a split second too late. With all 5 radar vehicles blown to smithereens, comms on the Hanko Peninsula are back up, but at a heavy cost. Linnea, fighting back tears, goes on TV to tell people to find shelter, then gives the order for a full-on assault.
Aloittakaa hyökkäys.
The Finnish Defense Forces carry out landing combat missions from both sea and air directions at lightning speed. The elite Jaeger units swoop in and take control of the port's air defense system. Then, a wave of CV-90 infantry fighting vehicles, K-9 self-propelled howitzer, and Leopard 2's 6 main battle tanks roll onto the battlefield. Guided by Eagle scan drones, they punch through enemy lines with surgical precision. Despite some pushback, they quickly break through the enemy defenses. The remaining enemy operations fall back to the built-up areas. The armor units deploy infantry for urban warfare to prevent ambushes or anti-tank attacks from cover. But street fighting is always brutal, no quarter given, and one wrong step could mean hitting a mine or booby trap. The first true operations to breach enemy positions report the coordinates of enemy armor, and RM-70 self-propelled rocket artillery immediately rains down fire. As the Finnish defense forces are racking up wins, Captain Rami and his neighbor Amanda are sneaking up on the shipyard. Rami had bumped into her earlier when he went back for gear. Amanda keeps watch outside while Rami goes in to rescue the captured soldiers. With the front lines crumbling, there's only a skeleton crew left, so Rami makes short work of the perimeter guards. But he walks right into an ambush inside. In the close quarters fight, Rami's on the ropes until he pulls his pistol in a surprise move, ending the fight. In the heart of the building, he chucks his last grenade, taking out 2 mercenaries guarding the prisoners. Berg and her squad are finally free, but they're not out of the woods yet. There are still enemy stragglers around. Berg slips away from the group, determined to save Williams, who's being held separately. The enemy sees Williams as a golden ticket to shake up the US, and they're planning to bug out with him. Berg takes out the mercenaries by the pickup truck with 2 precise bursts, but the engine's already running. She operations her rifle and sprints after it, barely managing to grab onto the truck bed, but the driver spots her.
Keep your hands where I can see them! Step away from me! Hands up! Move away!
It's Amanda, hidden in the trees, saving Berg with a perfect sniper shot. Back in the building, Rami, scouting ahead, catches a bullet from nowhere. The enemy tries to use the wounded Rami as bait to pick off the others. Osman quickly flanks them, providing covering fire. The team manages to pull Rami to safety, but he's in bad shape. Just in the nick of time, the Finnish defense forces show up, finally getting them all out of danger for good. Meanwhile, the main defense force units have cleared out the enemy from the city center, officially liberating the Hanko Peninsula. But the mastermind behind this mess is still a mystery. Most of the mercenaries are Russian, but Moscow's adamantly denying any involvement. The captured mercs are all singing the same tune. They're just tourists who came to Hanko for a good time. Whatever the case, Finland's pulled off a textbook defensive counterattack with the whole world watching. But victory comes at a price. At least 120 soldiers and civilians lost their lives in the conflict. The government gives them a hero's send-off, with the president paying tribute in a national address. There are no real winners in war, and the wounds it leaves on a nation and its people take time to heal. Even in peacetime, we've got to stay on our toes. Only a strong defense and the resolve to stand up to aggression can keep the peace.